Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
All right, gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. I am your host, Scot McKay, at Scot McKay on X, on YouTube, and on most other social media platforms, except for Instagram and I guess now Threads, where I'm at Real Scot McKay. The website is, as always, mountaintoppodcast.com. And gentlemen, I hope you're already on board with us at the thriving Facebook group, which is the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. But if you're not, hey, come on by and jump right in. You'll be among friends. With me today are a pair of guys that I've known, probably for a decade and a half. And for some crazy reason, I've never had either of them on the show before, although I've interviewed them for bonuses on various premium products I've done. I've done that several times, and I think I've probably been on one or two of their products featured as a guest as well. But together again for the very first time, which I know is a Yogi Berra-ism of sorts, with me today are none other than Zach Broman and Devon Ash from the newly reformed Social Fluency out of British Columbia, Canada. Guys, welcome.
This is awesome.
Thanks so much. Good to see you again. Good to be
here.
Great
welcome.
Yes, see each other figuratively, for sure. I mean, we were doing a little video before we pressed play on this particular podcast episode, but right now it's all audio from here. But yeah, nice to see you guys indeed.
Very
so
cool.
Tell me, what have you been up to for the last few years? You guys kind of went into a black hole with Social Fluency, and now here we are. Talk to me.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. So we had Social Fluency back in the day. You're right, about 15 years ago. And, you remember what it was like 15 years ago. There was a lot of, pickup stuff and a lot of gimmicky stuff. And we really wanted to focus on sort of more foundational social skills and kind of building out your life in a way that supports that. I left, about 14 years ago, and Devon's continued all this time. He's kept it alive and kept working with guys, and of course met his wife and got married, and bring some of that into it.
Yeah, that changes everything.
Changes things a little bit. So I've been kind of back for a few years, sort of informally, working with students just because I love it so much. I mean, there's nothing I love more than helping guys with this, seeing the changes, having them message me on their wedding day or whatever it is. Just gives me a lot of joy. And so, yeah, we're back working together in a more official capacity because, we have a really strong friendship, a deep caring for each other, and this work. And so we're excited to be back.
100%, you guys. I too love hearing the success stories, and they're out there. But a lot of guys kind of take what they get and run, right?
It's true.
Once they're happy, they have no need for me or for you guys anymore, and they're out there doing their thing. But it is nice when someone comes back and says, hey, you know what? Here's a picture of my honey. And you see, well, you know what? The guy did really well for himself.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to see how you guys have really done well for yourselves out there. Hence the topic today. Once I found that you guys were back in the saddle again doing your thing, I wanted to talk to you guys about the state of social skills now at the time we're recording this, which is in late 2023. It seems like there were 3 time periods in modern history: pre-COVID, during the throes of COVID, and post-COVID. And it seems like that post-COVID time was characterized by a social dynamic that was very different than before COVID even happened. But see, like you guys, we were talking about this before we hit record on this show. I believe things changed about a year and a half ago again. And now we're in a new period, a fourth one, if you will, where social dynamics have to be, figured out again. For a lot of people out there, it can be kind of confusing, right? So why don't you guys go ahead and riff on what you see as the lay of the land right now socially, especially compared to, say, 2 years ago and 5 years ago, respectively. And we'll just have fun from there, because I know you guys came with a lot of content.
Yeah. I mean, things have shifted a lot. I think if we look forward even 10, 20 years, I think we might be seeing repercussions of the COVID kind of experience for people, and especially younger generations. I was just in Vegas a week and a half ago, and it was wild. It was busier than I have seen it, and I lived there for a few years, busier than I've ever seen it. So I think we're in a stage now where people are really, really hungry to get out there, really, really hungry to connect with people. But I also think that through the COVID experience, their social muscles atrophied. And there's a lot of bumbling and kind of calibration that needs to happen to get people back on track.
You know, it's interesting you would use the very words that I've used myself on the show to describe what's gone on in the past few years. I've used that exact phrasing before, that people's social muscles have kind of atrophied as a result of the lockdowns. And a couple years ago, that post-COVID period was marked by people not really being ready to go out and meet other people again. People being a little cranky with each other, not knowing what to say, being afraid of each other.
Yeah.
And now I think you hit the nail on the head regarding what's going on nowadays, Devon. I think people are just absolutely starving for real, actual human interaction. And dare I say physical contact, because we were kind of trained to almost depend on social media and even pornography, especially for us guys. And now we're realizing, you know, that didn't cut it. And even so, AI is starting to catch up with us. So now you can build a girlfriend virtually who will do your bidding, bark like a dog, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, no boundaries.
Oh, free will is completely out of the picture. We can be our own God, basically, create our own women. And yet, that just doesn't seem like it can peacefully coexist with this very real world need for human interaction, right?
Yeah, I think we're at a kind of perfect storm right now. And basically, there are a few different cultural factors, the increasing isolation of men, which didn't start with the pandemic, but certainly kicked things into overdrive. Another thing I want to talk about is how dating apps have made things so much worse for both men and women, but, you know, men in particular may not realize how, you know, it's not just kind of what happens on the dating apps, but it's what the dating apps do to your self-esteem and to your confidence, and how they kind of keep you from actually connecting with people. And the other one is the changing and confusing messages around masculinity and what it means to be a man and what's appropriate for a man to do and not to do. Those are the three big cultural shifts that we've identified that, when we work with guys, we have guys come in, they're all saying the same thing, which is they're really lonely. They're not, you know, some of them are not having sex for years. And these are guys who maybe didn't do so badly 10 years ago. Maybe they were, you know, younger and then got a divorce. But yeah, we sat around with some guys a couple weeks ago and asked them what they were looking for. We were doing a weekend and yeah, every single guy said basically the last 4 or 5 months, I felt so alone. I felt kind of hopeless. I don't have a lot of friends and, just a lot of hopelessness, a lot of isolation. You know, I read that men tend to source more of their social needs from a partner, whereas women will source some of their social needs, at least from friendships. And so when a man doesn't have a partner, he's that much more isolated. And the sort of vicious cycle of that is women are not attracted to a guy whose, you know, social muscles have atrophied, who's not used to talking to people and so isn't charismatic, isn't in his element, doesn't feel super confident. And so then this vicious cycle, things just get worse and worse, where isolation leads to poorer success socially, which leads to more isolation. You know, or you look at Japan, where there's a whole millions of guys that just never leave their apartment, play video games, and order food in.
Yeah, and I mean, the otaku guys in Tokyo don't even have their maid cafes to go to anymore because those have all been ripped off by the tourists and gone sky high in price. Yeah, but I hear you. We talk a lot about the pressures on the birth rate and on the family unit on this show. And a lot of people think that's kind of a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. But everything tech related kind of does start in, well, Japan very often. And that pressure on the birth rate and the rise of loneliness in men, you know, that was a harbinger to the whole world. It started there and was very tech related. So I think you're onto something. Of course, COVID made everybody stay inside for a while. And I too get a lot of guys who just say, man, I'm lonely. Kind of an interesting spinoff from that thought is I also get a lot of guys who think women have no purpose other than sex. and you start enumerating all these wonderful reasons in response why women are just spectacular to have in your life. And they go, well, none of those count. None of those matter. But you just touched upon one that's mission critical. When we have a woman in our life, she curates our social circle for us. Like, it's done for us. And women, by virtue of their very real feminine nature, are just good at that. They bring all the fun, the joy, the play, the hospitality to the world. And so it's not uncommon for the very same men who, maybe they're bitter, maybe they're jaded, who come to me and say, hey, women are just no darn good for anything except screwing, to be also the guys who don't have any friends. They're the truly isolated ones. And yet they're kind of tree hugging this bitterness. And I just think it becomes a vortex of doom. So you guys talked about the isolation of men. And if you want to talk about this some more, that's great. You guys riff on that. I don't want to steal your thunder. But first, I do want to make sure that we have all three of the talking points that you laid out on the table clearly for these guys. You talked about guys being isolated. You talked about how online dating apps are kind of another vortex of doom, right? And I agree with you. So you have a friend in me when we're going to be talking about that. And the third one, that masculinity is kind of under assault for no apparent good reason. And, with regard to that thought, I agree with you, obviously. Anybody who disagrees with that has their head in the sand.
Yeah.
And also, for the record, we're not given anything to replace masculinity with if we're throwing it away. So, yeah, you guys riff on all of that. I think all three of those topics, it'd be great to hear a fresh voice because they're all foundational around here. And you guys have never been on the show before. So let's just see how the deck stacks. Go for it.
Awesome. Sure. Well, let me talk about isolation for a second, because I think it's kind of a core point, not just for men, realistically, it's also for women. Women are struggling as well in their own ways.
Yeah, and kids. Well,
I mean, that's just on a whole other level. But one of the things for men that's so devastating is that, if we put all the pressure of our social circle on our partner, which a lot of guys do. So what I hear a lot is guys who we work with will be like, yeah, I've got these friends that have no social skills, no social game. They just landed in a relationship and then they're with their partner for a while and then a divorce happens. And then this guy's 50 and he's alone. She's taken the social circle because it was ultimately they were her friends and he was just friends with the husbands. And now he's out alone on his own. And what they've found is that men who are single die earlier than married men. But for women, there's no correlation because women are able to rebuild social circles. They're, as you said, these natural kind of social mavens, whereas men struggle.
There are peer-reviewed studies in support of what you're saying.
Of course. And I mean, like, it's so clear to us as we walk around the world and we see, the women kind of out connecting and the guys just kind of, waddling along behind them. What we want to create with social fluency.
That's because their wives have all made them fat cooking for them, right?
Well, that's a great quality. But if guys are to put like all of their eggs in their wife's basket for their social confidence and their social connections, then they're really putting themselves in a precarious situation. And if there's a divorce, you split the assets, but the friends, there's no, legal kind of guideline that the guys have to get 50% of the friends. That doesn't happen. So guys end up being kind of left out to their own devices. And I think it's a very easy turn into online resources, which it's like fast food for your social life. It's not the real thing. It's not going to give you the nutrient dense experience that connecting with someone in the real world will.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's important is that a lot of guys are looking for success in their dating lives. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. You don't get that by learning what lines to say to women. And sure, having some skills to approach and make connection and get a phone number and set up a date, those are very important. But if you let's say you do that, and we've had students before, they come to us, learn how to get a date, they get in a relationship, but then they're not the guy that they want to be in that relationship. And one thing I can say about Devon, his marriage, is he and his wife are still very attracted to each other. And one of the reasons is, if you ever hang out with Devon, if he's in a room full of people, everybody likes him. He can command the conversation. He's not overbearing in a way that makes other people feel less than him. And I know Esther Perel, the leading voice on cheating.
A dubious honor indeed, right?
Yeah. Well, she talks a lot about how passion wanes in marriage. But one thing she says is that couples feel attracted to each other when they see each other socially, when they see each other in the eyes of other people. So when they go to a dinner party and they see their partner in their element, talking to other people, getting people's attention. And that's one thing I see in Devon's marriage, and I've told him this in the past as well, is that he's very much that person. He has a lot of friends, and he speaks and he works with men. And so when they're out with people, I mean, I can't walk down the street with him in Vancouver because I don't live in Vancouver, but without 3 people stopping him and loving him. And that, I think, really keeps the passion alive, because it wasn't about just this little trick, this, 3 simple questions to get the girl, but it was about this entire lasting change in how you relate to everybody, not just that one girl that you're interested in.
Thanks for that, Zach.
I think that's fascinating. And kudos to you, Devon. I think that's just nothing short of amazing. And I'm always thrilled to hear about guys I know who are in happy, thriving relationships, because we're not unicorns. There are things you can do that will make you more likely to be one half of a great relationship. And there are decisions you can make in favor of a woman who in turn is going to bring one half of that great relationship herself, right? I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Zach. And this idea of still being warm and helping other people feel good about themselves. Everybody's like, keep your hand off my stack. I'm just going to be a jerk to everybody. Everybody owes me something. The victimhood mentality is celebrated nowadays. It's crazy. I mean, there was an entire South Park episode where they kind of had some fun with Meghan and Harry and how much they painted themselves to be victims, And it's ludicrous. It's the theater of the absurd. We live in a culture where everybody has more privilege, more resource than anybody in the history of the world. And all it takes is stamping your passport to go to a country where the abundance isn't quite there. And yet you see people are actually sitting over here getting angry with each other about politics on X. I mean, this is messed up, and it's not a sustainable social future, is it, guys?
I would say
no, it's not. No. I just wanted to harken back to something you were saying, Scott, earlier, and this relates to sort of masculine feminine roles. But
he's going to harken back.
I'm going to harken. I got some harkening to do.
Just do a little harkening.
Is it hark or harken?
Harken. I'm harkening.
Okay, that sounds like you've turned Finnish on me.
Baron Harkonnen.
I think Harkonnen won last year's World Rally Championship.
Harkonnen is from Dune. It's from
Yuri Harkonnen.
Yuri Harkonnen with the goal. Yeah, a Harkonnen. You were talking about sex and sort of men's view towards sex, or women saying that men only want sex. I think one thing we have to keep in mind is that sex is important, and that there shouldn't be shame around wanting sex. And yes, if you're a guy who wants to use women for sex, pretend that you want more than sex, pretend you want a relationship and then dump them, that is not great behavior. But sex is an important part of life. And, to the point where there are, I can't think of it, but I know certain, like I think England and some other countries where, if someone has a permanent disability where they're unable to, find sex, on their own, the government will pay for sex workers to, have sex or sexual activity with them, because it is really important to our sense of, it's good for your hormones. It's good for your mental health, but it's also good for your sense of being attractive as a man. It's not a good feeling to feel rejected by half of society. Right. And so, one thing we talk about with masculinity is that, yeah, sure, some bad things have been thrown away for sure, but to own your sexuality and say, yes, I'm a man who's attracted to attractive women, and not apologize for that. And when I say apologize, I mean even in your body language or the way that you think, to feel like you need to hide that. It can be really powerful, and women find it really refreshing when done in the right way. if a guy doesn't feel, because a lot of guys are conditioned that they're like, no, I'm not interested in sex. I want to get to know you. They're so
yes,
right. But she wants a guy who.
I just want to talk to your sister.
Yeah.
Well, let me jump in here real quick. Far be it from us to ever vilify sex. I mean, my wife and I are in our 50s and we still pound each other like rabbits. And yeah, I get to see her socially and everybody loves my wife. I think my wife and Devon must be cut out of the same mold or something. Even people who are jealous of my wife and trying really hard to be catty and not stand her still break down and love her anyway. And that said, certainly sex is natural. And if anything, one of the really screwed up, ironically, ironic use of words there, ways that society is devolving here is trying to get people to have less sex and therefore make fewer babies. But I mean, I have to laugh out loud at that because horniness is a tsunami that you cannot stop. People are going to want to get naked and do the wild thing, and you can't stop them from doing it. And really, you can't even stop them from wanting it. Now, when guys come to me like they're coming to you and they're feeling a little bit vilified simply for being horny, that's one of the first bird's nests we have to unravel. Because, I mean, what's a heterosexual woman to do if there aren't men out there who are heterosexual and horny for her? And so here's the thing. All the people who are complaining, all the people who are vilifying sexuality, especially male sexuality, saying all sex is rape, all men are perverts. By the way, the cheapening of the word rape, that happened during the Me Too movement. I don't know if you noticed, but they pulled back from that. And it was the real rape victims who had them do that, who demanded that pullback. But remember like 6-7 years ago, we were cheapening the word rape. My daughter's principal yelled at her at school and he raped her when he did that. Well, the people who have experienced real sexual assault took umbrage at that. So at least we're back down from that. It serves to illustrate the broader point, though, that it's the angry people who are complaining, not the content people, not the people who are happy in their sexuality and happy with their sex lives. And, often the people who are angry are the ones who don't fit in with the structure and therefore want everybody to change to adapt to them and their special needs. Or people who have just been burned or hurt or somehow left out by sex. But see, that's not fair to the people out there who want to be happy. If you go out there, again, if you go out there and actually talk to real women who are on the dating sites, it's okay for a man to be horny. Matter of fact, they're hoping you will be. I mean, there's nothing worse than being in bed, hoping to have multiple orgasms if you're a woman with a guy who isn't horny and doesn't have any sexual interest, right? So the weird dichotomy is, I think we as men know that women want us to be sexually satisfied and satisfying for them in bed. Yet at the same time, we're trying to wrap our heads around this idea that our sexuality is inherently bad and evil. And the pieces just don't fit together. I mean, they do in real life, physically, but they don't psychologically. This is messed up, and it's just another example of how people are being led astray like sheep to believe things that don't jive with real-world design of humanity and human beings interacting. I mean, to say that men and women are designed to be adversaries, that flies in the face of our physical evidence, literally, physiologically, biologically, that men and women are absolutely, certainly designed to be in partnership. Yet, we go around somehow brainwashed into believing women don't want us sexually or that women don't like sex. All these things that MGTOW, red pill guys love to throw at the wall to see if they stick. And the only people whose walls it sticks to are the other fellow guys in their own echo chamber. Meanwhile, all the women are out here saying, hey, where's my John Wayne? Where's my real man? Where's the guy who can take me to bed and pound me good and hard like I need? And yet, most guys are thinking, well, the woman who said that must have been a porn actress because I don't see any real women out there inviting me to go do that. So this whole role of masculine leadership, masculine initiative, acting like a man, because we've been told it doesn't matter anymore, it's like a dirty trick has been played on us. You know what I mean? I'll shut up now. You guys go for it. I got a soapbox there, but you guys can take it from here.
That was great. That was great. Yeah, I mean, I think we're just in a situation right now where, this is like the masculine crisis. There's just not a lot of great voices. There's definitely some, but the loud voices aren't necessarily the ones that we hear a lot of.
Well, those are the guys who are embracing toxic masculinity and claiming it, saying, you can't call me toxic masculine. I, Andrew Tate or whoever else, I'm going to be toxic masculine and own it. And I just think that's wrongheaded. I even think it's anti-masculine. I think anytime someone's trying to say you can define something any way you want, what they're doing is they're erasing that term.
Yeah.
And now it's come down to women. It started with God. God can be whatever you want it to be. Therefore, there's no God. Then women. Oh, we can't define women anymore. So therefore, women are erased. And these are the same women saying this who are supposedly advocates for women. And somewhere in the midst there, someone said, hey, masculinity needs to be reimagined for the 21st century. So it can be whatever you want. You want to wear a dress, you want to act like a girl, whatever you want to do. Hey, that's masculine. But what happens is when it can be anything you want, it's nothing anymore. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, there's sort of a reality test for this that I like, which is, and Devon and I we do a lot of work on status, and you're familiar with the topic. And basically the reality test is it turning women on? Is it getting them excited? And if it's masculine, and of course not every woman, but yeah, if you've decided, that I'm a Sigma male, well, I've decided that status is about, making fun of myself, and, you're not getting any dates and women aren't attracted to you, then you're not matching with reality. One thing I want to talk about too, when we're talking about, I think that there's a natural, when we're talking about not shame around sex, but feeling like it's wrong, there is a big difference between desire and neediness. And so a lot of guys, they conflate the two. And they show a lot of desire, and they come in hot. My God, you're so beautiful. I would do anything for you. And the difference between desire and need in our minds is desire means this is something that would add to my life, but if I don't get it, that's okay. Need is this would add to my life, but if I don't get it, I'm going to be really upset. And that puts pressure on the other person. And so that understanding of, well, I told her I liked her and she wasn't interested. I expressed my desire and she dumped me. Desire with the lack of neediness is the most powerful tool you have in your arsenal to attract a woman. Women are very interested in guys that can express desire but not be needy at the same time. And so that's what we try and work on. And it's an understandable thing to want to hide it, because we feel if you see girls being attracted to guys who are aloof and not interested, but not interested, you're not kind of sparking that arousal. Because I don't know about you, Scott, but for me, arousal feeds arousal, right? Nothing turns me on more than turning on, a partner or someone I'm with. And so she gets turned on, I get turned on, I get turned on, she gets turned on. You build your arousal together. And so trying to go in and meet someone and date them while tucking your while castrating yourself.
Doing the tuck under. Yeah.
Doing the tuck under, exactly, is you're really taking away the most powerful thing that sparks attraction, I guess, humor and your own desire. Again, the key is to express it in the right way. So when you talked about online dating, messaging someone that you're super horny or, to send you nudes or whatever, that's not an appropriate way to start a conversation. Women do not like that. Any guy can do that, and they're getting hundreds of messages from guys who are quite capable of owning their horniness, if you want to put it that way, hiding behind a screen, but they're not able to do that in person.
Screens are like the new alcohol. If you have a couple of drinks, you can express your interest. If you are texting, you can express your interest. But how do you show up when you're stone cold sober at a grocery store chatting with someone? I think just to kind of piggyback on what Zach's saying, I think there's a huge element of body language here where if you can express your desire for someone while maintaining a relaxed, calm, playful body language, you communicate that you want them, but you don't need them. And I think that's where a lot of the nuance is. And that's why online dating and all the kind of social media stuff that's happening is so detrimental is we're taking this incredibly important piece just out of the equation and replacing it with like maybe an emoji that doesn't do justice.
I mean, when you think about it, prior to, the invention of language is pretty recent in the evolution of mammals, in the evolution of sexuality. So body language is all there was until pretty recently. I think that's one of the things about online dating is you're taking that out of the equation and people are trying to make choices based on, pictures and profiles. And so when we take an imbalanced ratio where there are way more women than there are men, and I've looked at the stats, I know anywhere from 4 to 1 on Tinder. In certain places like London, it's 9 men for every woman. So if you're in a room with 100 guys, there's 10 girls there, right? And every single guy is messaging. And if she's at all attractive, all kinds of guys are messaging her. And the women get overwhelmed, right? And they not respond. And guys get in this thing where they're like, well, if you message her too quickly, when you get in a chat, you're going to feel needy. But if you don't message her, there's 100 guys in line who will, so she'll forget about you. So if you try and move things forward, she says she's not interested because she senses you're over-investing, and it seems, like it kind of lowers your mate value, if we can use that language. But again, if you hang back at all and let things pace and unfold naturally, well, she's gone on 3 dates this week with 3 other guys and she's forgotten all about you. So that's kind of one of the problems. I think the other problem, as we talked about body language, is because women they have so many options or seeming options. I know they're not real options, and women are just as frustrated with men about this.
That's important to note.
Yeah. But all they can go on, or what they go on, is age, height, pictures, things that prior to online dating, it's not that they don't matter. Women prefer guys that are really tall to guys that are really short. That's a preference. But, Scott, you remember back in the day, you could overcome those things really easily because what's
this back in the day stuff? I still take guys out in field.
Yes, well, exactly. But if they meet offline, we have guys offline because they're actually more single women that are not on apps that are, and the ratio is actually skewed in your favor offline. More on that in a bit. But yes, if she meets a guy, Devon, you're 5'8". So not a super tall guy.
I'm shorter than that.
But not a problem, right? And his wife actually, we were talking the other day, his wife actually didn't realize that he was 5'8". She thought because he has stature, he has a presence, he has posture, and she just felt feminine next to him. And then her sister mentioned, oh, he's about my height. She's like, no, he's not. He's tall. But those things don't matter. But if you're looking at a checklist, if you have 200 guys, and this is all you know about them, you're going to go after the guy that's the perfect age, the guy that has no kids, if that's what you're looking, that has all his hair, that has no body fat. And so what you get is women kind of going after these guys, and then they get matches, they get chats, and even they'll get men that want to have sex with them, but then the men don't want to commit because they've got a lot of options. They've got so many options, but the women start feeling, well, that guy was a jerk. But this is the quality of guy that I expect to get. I expect to get a guy who's 6'2" and has abs and has all these things because I've been able to date that kind of guy. They just haven't committed to me. And so everybody ends up with this it affects everybody's self-image. There's empirical research on kind of mate value and understanding and knowing and being accurate about your own mate value being really important. Everyone's got a skewed sense. And unfortunately with men, it's just going down, 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 down. I mean, you're not getting matches. And then when you do, the conversation goes nowhere. And then if the conversation goes somewhere, it suddenly stops. And then you finally get a date. And even if it goes well, you often don't get a second date because, she's got a bunch of other guys. And as I said, women are also frustrated with this. It isn't women's fault for being too picky. They can't just change their criteria. They can't just say, well, I'm going to start going out with guys I'm not interested in.
Let me jump in here real quick. 2 things to add to this conversation. First of all, online dating apps by nature are shallow. It feeds the immediate gratification culture, which sounds so amazing on paper. But in real life, you get this snooze fest of everybody dismissing each other before they even give each other a chance. And they're not even real people until you meet them, by the way.
That's right.
Second of all, let's do more hearkening. I like the hearkening. It works in this
Yeah,
context.
hearken.
Yeah. You guys talked about how guys lead with horniness. They send dick pics and say, hey, want to have a booty call? And women are disgusted by that. Here's the irony. Okay. Whenever women try to scam guys, or, women in air quotes, it's probably really some guy in Nigeria, right? They're always leading with acting like a man. Hey, let me send you pictures of my boobies. Hey, would you like to get together and screw? The funny part is 90% of men know that's a scam because that's not how women are.
Yeah.
Yet, those same guys will turn around and keep up with the same routine when they're trying to contact women, which leads to another huge problem with dating apps. And you guys have already kind of, driven the ring road around the city here.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's go ahead and go downtown. Ready? They feed selfishness so that the apps can make money. Here, we're going to give you what you want. Tell me, give me the check boxes, enumerate exactly what you want, and I'll deliver it to you on a silver platter. And what happens is there's another human being out there who doesn't necessarily agree with giving you everything you want on a silver platter. So we do things we know don't work. And both men and women will do this, right? But we keep doing it because that's how we've been trained. And that's what keeps the apps making money. It's been years since the online dating sites were there to help people actually meet each other.
Yeah.
Especially during COVID.
Yeah.
They figured out the algorithm that keeps people addicted to paying the money month over month and realized, my goodness, results don't even matter to these people anymore. They're just sheep. They just keep putting money into the meter. It's like a one-armed bandit. They keep dropping quarters in there hoping for a jackpot.
Yeah, it's a social
cash
slot
cow.
machine.
Yes.
Absolutely.
In reality, you're right. And you guys are absolutely stone cold correct. You go out into the real world and they're human. And you say hello to a woman at the grocery store and she turns around and looks at you like you have 3 heads. And you think, oh, well, she's disgusted. But if you were better at semiotics and reading body language, she's just surprised and doesn't know what to do nowadays. If you hang in there and go, hey, you know what? It's okay. My name's Scott. What's yours? She'll pause. She'll smile and respond to your warm levity, as I call it, with, oh, my name's Melissa. And then you're having a real conversation, and both of you are disarmed by it.
And then she'll text her friends, oh my God, I met a guy. And they'll say, Tinder, Bumble? And she'll say, no, in real life. And the girls will go,
real.
What? Marry him.
Yeah, well, I mean, I met my wife in the real world, and that has acted as almost like a source of gravity that, there's something really special about our connection. And we have like a great story about how we met. And I don't think it's like gotten us through a bunch of hard times, but I think there's this extra element of like, oh no, there's something magical about our connection. There's something magical about how this is unfolded. And I think guys can take a piece of that and just be like, what if life was magical again? What if there was like a little bit of kind of fairy dust in the air and you could connect with people and create really interesting stories for them to tell your children and your grandchildren? And that you don't need to paint too much of a picture there, but you can create a reality that you live in all the time, which is what happens to the guys that all 3 of us work with, where they're creating these little magical moments with people. And sometimes it turns into something amazing. And other times it turns into something unrelated to romance, just a new friendship that gets you invited to a party where you meet someone who's starting a startup and you get a new job. Life is these kind of constantly unfolding opportunities if you're out in it. But if you're just sitting back and sort of either watching the world happen in front of you or using the internet to kind of tap into the world, then you're missing out on such a potent part of being a human.
I'll tell you, there's been an absolute uptick in the demand for my 4-day weekends where I take guys out in field and we meet over 100 women out in the real world. And I think it's because of all the dynamics in concert that you guys have been talking about. Guys are like, look, I'm going to meet some women and I'm going to start meeting the ones I really like for once if it's the last thing I do. And I think we instinctively know that online anything isn't the answer. It's not dating apps. It's certainly not porn. And a damn Skippy is not an AI-generated girlfriend. It's out there in the real world. Women are still women. They still like men. And we as men, deep down, even if we're trying not to, like women, or are at least in love with the idea of women, if not the real deal. That's why the men going their own way don't. They're still here, complaining about women, obsessed with women. They don't go their own way because they can't, you know? So there's something to be said for going out there and, I don't know, embracing this fourth movement of recent social development. It's like I always said, the new school is the old school.
Love that.
Well, I was going to say, I think the challenge, it's always been, but I think what's especially difficult right now, whether you're online or offline, is standing out. Why should she choose you? And it's about making her feel emotions, which is hard to do through an app. But imagine somebody who's had a dream their whole life, and then they give up on that dream, and then somebody comes along and makes that dream possible after they'd given up on it. The powerful emotions that brings. So a lot of women have almost given up on meeting a guy in real life and having a real life love story, a romantic story. They're just like, this is the way the world is. I've been on the apps for years. I've been on a bunch of dates. I've dated a guy for 3 months and one for 6 weeks and had a bunch of situationships. And then they meet a guy in a grocery store who's calm and charming and not a creep. All of a sudden, she now believes that all those things that she always wanted as a little girl and growing up are now possible. The flood of emotions that a woman experiences when that happens, you cannot get that through a dating app unless everything aligns so perfectly. And this is, you two have whatever, you were born in the same hospital and you have so many coincidences in your life. But to give somebody something that they'd all but given up on is, that is so powerful. And that's why we focus so much on just offline. And again, it's kind of old is new again, but it's also with a twist. Gimmicks don't work. All these things are played out, with dressing in funny costumes and using routines and lines. And, we teach pretty straightforward or observational how to be present in the moment and how to be authentic in a way that's attractive. And that's what works. And that's what feels good to yourself. And that's what feels good to her. And that's a story that you'll always be able to tell. And as I said, I just want to hammer this point home. I think what guys don't realize is that even being on apps, it hurts your confidence. You're constantly getting a signal that you're not good enough, right? You're swiping right on a girl who you're like, nah, maybe. And then she doesn't match with you, and you're like, okay, well, where do I fit if even these girls are rejecting me? And so it's not just, it's fine as another avenue if you use it, if you want to be on there. But if it's your only way and that's your ecosystem, you're positioned at the bottom and you're going to feel like that. And when you feel like that, that does become your reality, online and off. So if I spend the weekend swiping and feeling like a loser because I didn't get anywhere with it, even with women I'm not super attracted to, then when I go out, I'm going to carry that self-image with me. And I think self-image is really, key to attraction.
Boom. I think that's your mic drop right there.
Yeah.
As you're talking, I'm reminded of the simple fact that when it comes to online dating apps, there's only one trait that allows you to succeed with women. All of the rest of them suddenly don't matter anymore because they're invisible vis-a-vis the one that does matter. And that's creativity. If you know how to stand out, I might toss in there, how to write, but I think that's part of artistic creativity,
Mm-hmm.
Those are the guys who are crushing it online, regardless of all the other factors. I mean, they may not even be confident.
Or they've got some kind of hack. Yeah, they've kind of like taken a course.
Well, I would think that's the ultimate hack. If someone else has been creative for them, great. But that's only going to carry them so far in a real world situation.
Well, exactly. Then you got to be on that coffee date and suddenly they're sitting across from just like a deflated energy. And when it all comes down to it, no matter, at what stage it clicks in, you do have to connect with that person in the real world, or you may as well have one of these AI girlfriends.
Well, yeah. I mean, connection is what we're all looking for. If
Yeah.
you have 5 hot chicks to choose from, the one you like the most, and you feel most connected with is exactly what's going to separate the one you prefer from the others. And that's exactly what it's like to have options. There are 5 women you can choose from, and you get the luxury of connecting with one. Just like you guys have driven home, a lot of guys feel so isolated that it just seems like a pipe dream that they'll ever have 2 women to choose from, let alone 5. And I'd also add, and these guys know I'm on record with this, that perception that women have all the advantages online and offline in dating comes from us only noticing the desirable women.
Yes.
The multitude of
absolutely.
undesirable women out there feel like the undesirable guys.
That's right.
They think men have all the power in male-female relationships, and only the few women who look like supermodels have any chance.
That's a great point, yeah.
Well, the good news for us as men especially is genetic giftedness isn't necessarily what propels us to the top in terms of having those options with women. It's a lot of the things we talked about today. And in response to what you were talking about, Zach, I think you brought up a very good point, and it deserves being illuminated just a little bit more. You were talking about the new school is going to be the old school, but we can't wear fuzzy hats and black fingernail polish anymore. We have to actually go out and interact with women in the real world. Well, the first thing that came to mind is, wow, if that's old school, we're going even older school. And then the term that came to mind was fundamentals. We have to go back to what works. You know, instead of trying to be one of those guys playing street ball in Brooklyn, we got to be Tim Duncan out there. You know, we got to go back to what works. We've got to go back to the fundamentals of how men and women interact. What attracts women? You're talking about the calm guy who's charming. What about a woman who's actually feminine and wants to bring comfort and bring play instead of trying to impress us as guys with the same things we as men use to try to impress women on dates with? Men need to be men. Women need to be women, as always. Masculinity and femininity are the building blocks of sexual attraction. No politics are ever going to change that. No sociologist is ever going to change that. And that's what we've got to do. And you guys are dead on accurate. I want to send these guys to your website, which they can find at mountaintoppodcast.com/fluency, FLUENCY. And Zach Broman and Devon Ash, one of you guys tell these guys what they're going to find when they go there.
Well, we're actually putting together a package just for your listeners.
Sweet.
Yeah. And it'll be waiting for them at the URL you mentioned. And some content, some videos, and some PDFs, and some things that are going to help them. When we started Social Fluency 15 years ago, I'm really glad you said fundamentals, because that was our focus. We saw boot camps and we saw all this stuff, and we wanted deeper change. You know, we wanted assertiveness and humor and conversation and, leadership and how to stand up for yourself. Because as Devon was saying, even if you meet someone online because you've got some, ability to type well, you're still going to have to show up and be that guy.
Otherwise, it's all a big fantasy.
So that's been our focus. And I think, time has now caught up with people recognizing that's kind of what they want as well. So we'll have some resources there for them, some freebies, and we look forward to sharing them.
Fantastic. And if you guys want to work with Zach and or Devon, I'm sure you'll be able to take it from there on the website. All that's there for you at mountaintoppodcast.com/fluency. I have to tell you guys, Zach and Devon, it's great just to talk to you again.
Agreed.
It's great to have you back on the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it thrills me. And what a great show. I think I'm going to have to add this one to the essentials list. It was a great show that I think every man on earth should listen to.
That's an honor.
Thanks, Scott.
Oh, the honor's mine. Yeah. And guys, if you have not been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, we got freebies there for you too. You can download my book, Sticking Points Solved, which covers just about every situation you're likely to enter into when interacting with women, along with a good solution for how to get out of the sticky part of that. You can also get your minty fresh copy of that new audio program, Women and AI, which I would also say is nothing short of essential itself. And while you're at the site, you can also visit Origin in Maine, heroessoap.com, and the Keyport. Please use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 to let them know we sent you. And you'll get 10% off your order when you do, right? And listen, guys, whatever it takes to get you in front of the real women in the real world you really want to meet and get you away from dating apps, let's make that happen for you. I know you guys want real women in the real world. And I wasn't fooling around when I said guys are calling me more often than ever, wanting to get in on the 10 Plus Live 4-day weekend with me. It'll be the greatest investment you've ever made in your life. If you're one of those guys, come on over to San Antonio. We'll get immersed in meeting women all weekend long. Yeah, there's some nervous energy, but most guys chalk it up to adventure travel when they come to see me for 4 days. It takes a lot of energy too. You will be exhausted at the end of it, but it'll also be the greatest decision you have ever made. To get back in the real world in the face of where we are today in history, buck the trend and go meet some women in the real world who will be happy to meet you too. All the information you need starts at mountaintoppodcast.com. You can get on the phone and talk to me for free for 25 minutes as always. We can discuss doing a 10 Plus Live weekend if you want or anything else that's on your mind. I'm here for you. I'll be the one who answers the phone, and I'm exactly who you expect me to be. I don't play a fictional character. Everything starts at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.